Hello. In previous class we talked about Java string arrays. Now basically we're going to talk about something called Java strings. Strings is quite essential and important because it plays a vital role when we try to validate the data that is being entered by the user. As we know that once we create a dynamic websites, we require user to enter some form of data, interact with the websites, and that usually data is in text form, and we need to validate whether the data is correct or not. For example, the passwords are correct, the number of characters in a password, the email address, the format of email address, the name, whether the field has been left blank or not, and so on and so forth. For that, we perform various different operations on string, and in this class we would learn what is string and what are various different methods of strings that allows us to validate the data. This is Dr. Zeeshan Bhatti. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe the channel and hit that bell icon right next to it so you receive the lectures regularly and you keep update on the new videos. Let's begin. Now, a string, we define it as a collection of character array. A string simply consists of defining a variable that contains multiple characters in an array form internally. Okay, so for example, if we come here and if I create a script tag, and let me just close that. If inside the script tag we declare a variable, for example name, and within this we have my name inside. All right, now typically this is what a string looks like. Every string has to be incorporated within the double inverted quotation marks. So we always write in string inside the quotation marks. The quotations don't appear in the output. It's the content inside the quotation marks that count. The string itself is known as a collection of character array. It's an array but with only a specific type called character. So each character here is basically an array element. Each character here is considered as a character element. Each character, again, because it's an array, always starts from a 0 index. So it starts 0 index, 1 index, 2 index, 3 index, 4 index. So this is a typical version of string that we create. So anything that comes inside a double quotation marks is considered a string. Similarly, you can also create a string with, for example, name OB is equal to new string, and then you can specify the arguments within it as well. This becomes the string object. Just like an array, you can create the same thing here as well. So you create a variable, we give it a variable name, and we use the new keyword. New basically will ensure that this is a proper object within the JavaScript. However, the functionality is exactly same. Either you create this manner or this manner. So you can use both the methods as you like. Okay, so this is simply as a string it goes. The major advantage comes when we start to use some of the methods. So if I come here, let me correct that. So if you come here, the major advantage comes when we start to work with various different methods of string. There are numerous different methods that we can use with strings. So if you're coming from Java, you know that these are almost the same methods that we have available in Java as well. And the behavior and the output of those methods again is almost same. Okay, for example, the method character at is a method again present in Java as well, also used in JavaScript. This method basically allows us to tell that what a particular character is at a given index. So whatever index number we give in its argument, each character is returned from that point. Similarly, character code add concatenation index of, this will give the index number of a method, and last index of, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are various different methods that we tend to use to validate the data or change the data or a string data. Okay, let's use some of them so that we can get an idea of how basically we are going to do that. Okay, so let's use these methods. So first thing we do is we write document dot, okay, sorry, not inside this. We should make sure we go inside the script tag and we write document dot writ, right, and bracket start bracket close. In order to print this string, we write the variable name, Control S, and if I go inside the output, my string appears basically on the browser. Okay, this is using a simple string. Again, remember, we can use the string keyword or the string form within the document.write as well, and we have been using it for previous examples as well. For example, the name of instructor is, and then we write. So whatever we write inside the double quotations is always considered as a string. And then in order to join a string, we use a plus operator. Now here the plus behaves like a concatenation operator. Typically plus has been known as a what we refer to in terms of arithmetics, a plus operator. It pluses two numbers. However, when we use a string, this plus now behaves like a concatenation operator. It concatenates this string with this string. So whatever is in the name, it's also a string, and this, because inverted quotations have been used, also becomes a string. So now they both are basically combined together to produce a one single string output. So name of the instructor is Zeeshan Bhatti. Okay. Always remember, you can write HTML tags within JavaScript as well. So I can give \b as a bold, and you would see that now it's basically bold. If I come here, \b was now it is okay. So now it becomes bold. So you can write a string HTML tags within the string. What happens is that this string is first thrown to the browser. Browser reads this object and then it processes the HTML. Once it reads the string, it finds HTML tag and then it processes HTML tag like it has been written in a normal HTML. So you print the HTML as well, but not the tags, the output of the HTML. Okay, so this is one way of getting an output on a browser. Now, as I said, typically what we do is we try to use methods. So for example, if I delete all this, and if I, in fact, let me delete this. For example, if I create a form, okay, let me write a tag form, and then I give it a name called user data. Okay, and let's just give it and put it inside inverted quotations. There we go. Okay, and then we close the form. Within this form, we need to write some information. So for example, your name, NAME name, and then I can write input, and then the type can be, for example, text. And then the name of this text field can again be, for example, txt NAME name. Okay, and I close this. Then I include something called BR, so the text appears on the next line, and I can say, for example, password, or maybe email address. Let's just use email right now. So I write email, and then again I write an input field, and I type type. Let this be text. Okay, but now we have something called email as well, which basically would ensure that your text field is directly email. But for example, we just give it a text right now, and we will try to process this email address according to our own preferences. Okay, so we write name here, and this can be what we say txt text email, so that we understand what we are doing. Okay, now this is a naming convention that we tend to follow. For an input type text, I write txt. If it's a button, we write button, so that you understand. It's not a rule, it's just something that you understand what you're trying to do. So in order to access the text field called name, I know that I have written something called txt for text field, and the name would be name itself. Similarly, txt email, and then again I would write br here, this time password, password, and this can again be input, and this type we write type. And then again we write a password field as well, so that ensure it's not blank. And when we write the name of it, NAME name is equals to double quotations, again I write txt pass, I think should do the trick. We close it. Okay, then finally again one more time br, again br for break line, and then we write input, and this time I want the type to be, for example, button, button. Name of that button can be btn. Okay, and then we will write an on-click event on this button that would drive this action. Okay, so we can say on click, do certain actions on this button. So this is a form. If I press S, typically this is what we get. Okay, obviously don't worry about the alignment and everything we will talk about, and we worry these things later on. Let me give it a value. Okay, I guess click, so we have an OK option available. Now let's come to the script tag, and I close it script tag here. Within this script tag, we usually write functions whenever we want to control a form, or we want to check a form, because we want to an event to trigger. Okay, so because we want an event to trigger, we need to ensure that when an event triggers, certain piece of code gets executed, and that way it's always recommended to use the functions. It's much more easy to control. So for example, I use a function called check form. Okay, and now in this check form, what we can do, we can process the data that's been entered inside an HTML form. In order to retrieve the HTML form data, we can say, for example, a variable name. Okay, let me just maximize this so you can read the content better. So variable name is equals to, we say go inside the document dot, there is something called forms. For the first array of, we will use the name user data. Now we have been talked about this previously as well, so we say user data. So this is the first array, means go inside the document, there are forms there, so there is a form there. Inside the form there is, or which form, basically we use a user data, because again there can be more than one form. So we say inside the document there are forms. Which form? User data form. So access the user data form. Inside this user data form there is field. Which field? For example, now double quotations, we know we have been writing the names properly, so text name dot value. Okay, this is what we need to do. So now what it will do, it will fetch the value of a text field called name, which belongs to a user data form inside your document. I hope you understand the hierarchy that we discussed in DOM model. Now once I have the variable name, I can do various different types of actions on that particular data. So let's just do one thing. For example, what we would like to do, let's just explore a few of the methods that we have available within our string class. Okay. For example, let's just do one thing. Okay. Doc document dot write, and then we use a method called character at. Okay. This name dot char character at, that's the first method that was in our list as well. Okay, character at is a basic method that fetches the character at a given index. So for example, if I give it a 0, now 0, again we know it within a string, 0 basically represents the first index. So whatever name we enter here in my text field, the first character of that name will be fetched. So what I do is I press S, I go back into my code and I write the name, for example, myself. Okay, as soon as I press OK, so we press OK and nothing happens. Why not? Okay. That's one main thing. If you need to check the errors within JavaScript, again always remember, press Ctrl+Shift+I in Google Chrome. I'm using Google Chrome for that matter. Within Google Chrome we come inside something called console. When you press Ctrl+Shift+I, so as soon as you press Ctrl+Shift+I, the developer modes comes in. Inside the console, probably a list of errors might appear, which tell you that what's the problem, or which might tell you what's the problem. In our case, there is no error. So if I press Ctrl+Shift+I again, let's hide it. This code is not working. What's the mistake we did? Sorry, silly mistake. Remember, on click means whenever we click a button, it's supposed to perform a function. It's supposed to perform certain event, certain action seems to be is required to be done. Okay, so which in our case we have to tell it that, bro, kindly go and check my form. Control S. Okay. So now it basically means that once we click on this button, it will go and execute this on check form function. Once it checks this function, then it will go read the data from the text field and fetches the first index of that particular text field. So now if I come back here and write myself here and come back into OK button, again it performs nothing. Have I saved it? Thank you. It's not performing. Ctrl+Shift+I. Now you see there's an error here. It says that uncaught type error, cannot read property text name. Cannot read property called txt name. Okay, unidentified checksum input, blah 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 blah. Basically, it says that it's not able to find this property inside the user data. So inside the user data, we have fetched this name, something called text name, right? So if you see this is text name. The name is correct if I'm okay. So inside the user, okay, again, sorry, my mistake, humbly. The U is capital here, the U is small here. Control S, I go back here and let me just Ctrl+Shift+I it again and hit Zeeshan. This time, thank God, it presented to us the name, the first character at Z index. Okay, in this case the output was generated on a new page because we have fetched the data from a form, and sometimes it does that in a weird way. So in order to generate the output at the same page, let's just use the paragraph tag. Within the paragraph tag, I can say style, let the color be, for example, red, semicolon, let the font size be, for example, 30. Similarly, let there be a let there be a border, border. Border. This border can be, for example, of 5 pixels, solid solid and gray. Let's just see if it works. Because now we have this paragraph, or we could have used a div as well for that matter. Anyway, so we have created an empty paragraph, and then within this empty paragraph we need to specify an id. Id is equals to bracket start bracket close, and this time id para1. Usually I like to name it in this way so I understand which para we are talking about. Control S. So now in order to print the data on a paragraph, instead of using document.write, let me just comment this. I can write that go inside this particular paragraph and change the data. So I write document dot get element by id, and if id is basically id para1. So fetch this paragraph 1 id dot inner html and then change the value. So the change value can be name. Name is again this thing, okay, the variable name that we've used here. So we said go inside this string name dot we fetch the character at index, and this time I just give it 0. Okay, enter, save it. We come back here, we give it a value called this thing, click OK, we get the output. Okay, so we get the output right here and then. Now this is character at 0 index. So now character at is a method that fetches a character at a particular number. So whatever number you give here, you will be able to fetch the character here. So for example, if I use 2 here, Control S, and if I give my name again, click OK, you will see the E. Now E is basically from the second index. 0 being first, 1 being E, and then this is the second index. Let's just use a better name. Now once you have written the code, the advantage is you don't need to execute whatever. Once the code is written and the function written, for example, if I change the name to Ali, now I click OK, it will fetch I. Okay, I'm not saving the code, I'm not changing the code. Now the function has been written, the code is there. Whoever the user is, whatever their name is, they just write the name and you just click on OK. And what it will do, it will check the data, fetch the data and print that particular form. Okay, so another way of doing it is that maybe we can do a small validation. Okay, the validation can be, for example, we can write if, you can write if, and if can be, for example, this name. Name is again the variable name here, which contains or which will have the data from the form. So whatever we enter here will be actually stored in this name variable. So we said go name dot, or let's just leave it, name is equals to empty string. Okay, bracket close. If in a case user doesn't enter anything inside this name form, what should happen then? In this case, it will just give us nothing, no outputs, but we want an error to be there. So we can say if such is the case, maybe a window dot alert should be generated. Okay, and that window dot alert can be about that enter your data correctly, bracket start, enter data in form. Okay, so we save it. Else if this is not blank, means there is something inside the name field, then generate this data. So small validation we do. So for example, there is no data here. If I click OK, we get a message, enter data in the form. Okay, so whatever message you want to pop up. But if we have data, for example, myself, then I click OK. So whatever is on the one index is printed. So this is another way of validating that you have entered the data in this form or not. Okay, so character at allows us to read a particular character at any given index. Similarly, there are other methods that we use within our system as well. So for example, we can use concatenate method to join two strings. Okay, concatenate, this is concat method. Okay, the concat method basically combines these two strings and numbers together. So but which you can usually do with the plus operator as well. Okay, the third method that we can use, for example, can be index of. Now in order to do the next validation, basically let's just use, for example, email address. Okay, so we have a text field called email address, and we want to ensure that the email address has been entered in a correct format. In order to do that, again what we do is we come here and we declare a variable called email is equals to, and we need to read the email from a form. So again the same process, we go inside the document, we say there's forms inside this document, the form name being bracket start bracket close capital user data, then another brackets, and then we need to find txt email. Okay, so go inside the document, read a form called user data, and inside this user data there's a text field and fetch its value. Okay, semicolon. So now what we have done is we have read the data from the document and saved it in non-email. So this is a variable in JavaScript called variable, and we read the data from our form. We got the value from the text field of HTML and gave it to our JavaScript value. Now using JavaScript we can validate whether this is correct or not. So for example, variable index 1 I guess is equals to, I can say email dot index of bracket close semicolon in inverted quotations at the rate. Okay, which now basically means that we want to fetch the index of at the rate. Wherever there is, we know that every email address has to have an at the rate. So once we have this, we need to use that thing as well. Okay, and then let's just print this index of, for example, I can use the same thing. We have one paragraph that does this para. Let's just use a second para here. Okay, go back and give it ID para 2. Instead of gray, let's just give it, for example, green, so it has a green border, and color can be, for example, let it be red. Okay, so we have a green border color here with the para 2. Okay, so I just copy pasted the paragraph so I can use this for it. Now we can again go this with the same thing. Again, let's just copy paste it. I love to do that, sometimes it's just more easy. And then inner HTML we have got up till here. Okay, dot is equals to, and we just set the value of index 1 semicolon, press S. This is saved. Now what we did here is that we first created a variable called index 1. We went inside the email. This is the email variable here. This email variable contains the data that has been entered in the form, in email address. Then we said that find me the index of at the rate. Okay, find me the index of this at the rate, because every email address must have this at the rate. If there is no email address or no at the rate, this will give us -1 probably. Okay, so let's just find out. And then I use document.getElementById by para 2, I think, because this time it's para 2. We changed it, so I created another paragraph tag, gave it certain settings. Now go inside this inner HTML and print the value of index. So when we do that, we come here, this is my Zeeshan, and at the same time I give my email address. Okay, so once I click OK, there you go. Okay, so E is basically the third index or the second index. If I come here, where is this? Yes, the second index. Let's just make it 0 so it prints the first index. Okay, so again, oh sorry, Zeeshan, and at this field, sorry, it's just moving a little too early. Okay, Zeeshan @gmail.com, and now I click OK. So first character being Z, and the 7 represents the 7th character where the @ symbol is. See, so now we know that there is an @. What happens if there is no @? So for example, even in this thing, if I just delete and write this thing, so this is not a valid email address, but people tend to do that. If I click OK, it gives me a -1. This -1 indicates that there is no @. Now if there is no @ in your email address, means your email address is not valid. So what we do is we use this method index of to validate our email address. So what we can do here is we can write a condition now. Okay, so we can say if this index 1, the number we said, is equals to -1. If this is equals to -1, we can generate another window dot alert. Okay, this alert message then can contain message that enter valid email address. Okay, so if this is -1, means that the user has not entered @ sign, so we give this message. Else, okay, we need else if there is, wow, sorry, we go here now. So else document.getElementById, print that email ID. So Control S. This time I come back here, we go here Zeeshan, and then again I enter Zeeshan, and then I just leave it blank. There is no email address. If I click OK, it says enter valid email address. So this is another validation that we can do. Click OK. We have the Z from the first, but there is no index here because we have already generated the message. Okay, so similarly we can also validate various other fields like password and all other things using various different functions within our HTML. Okay, obviously it's at the rate as well as a full stop, so sometimes we do the second function as well. So if I copy this, let me do the email verification value properly, so we get enter, and instead of this time we will write dot. So if index is not equal to 1, and we use the AND operator, and we again say index 2 is also equals to -1. Okay, so in this case, now if there is no full stop, then again it will generate -1. If both are -1, give me this thing. In fact, let me just write OR here, just pipe. Okay, what this OR means, that either it should have AND or either one of them is missing, give me an error. Either one of them is missing, give me an error. Now because we are using JavaScript, we need to put this in brackets. If you are using Java, you might not need these double brackets, but in JavaScript it requires that you solve this expression first, then solve this expression first next, and then give me this bracket. So now if I come here, click OK, enter the form data which is blank, enter the valid email address, so we get this error. So for example, if I enter this name and there is nothing here, click OK, enter a valid email address. Okay, in either case it will return -1, enter a valid email address. For example, I write just simply this thing, click OK, enter a valid email address. So if I give @ but I don't complete it, click enter, still it says enter the email address. So I write, for example, Gmail now, click OK, again it says it's not okay until I give a full stop, click OK. There we go. So now because there is AND and there is also full stop, now it's all okay. We can also print the value of a full stop for that matter. Okay, so I can use index 1 and then I can say plus and then inverted quotation, so there's a space here, and then I can say, let me just use a semicolon in the between, and then plus and index 2. Okay, so now if you come here and if I give this value and zeeshan@gmail.com, click OK, you would find these both numbers. So Z is the small letter, then @ is at the 9th index and dot is at the 15th index. This is what it simply does. Also sometimes we need to validate the space in this case. So if there's a space, how would we do that? Okay, we need to also ensure that there is no space in the email address. What if the user has given, in my case I have given the space, email address should not contain a space. Then what happens is that again same condition, we use another validation, Control C, enter, Control V, and this can be said index space space. Let me use that, and instead of full stop just use space, and now validate whether user has entered a space or not. Okay, so now we have tried to find the space value. If it contains space, again, so we can use another if conditions. If this value is anything greater than 1, okay, then it generates this error. So for example, if this is the case, or, okay, again I add another or here, and then I write, for example, index space is greater than 0, greater than equal to 0. 0 is again an index. So if this basically means that it can be on a 0 index, user might have entered the first character as a space, so this will have a 0 index. Okay, it might have at somewhere else. So in this case we have said that it should be greater than equal to 0. So just in case the index is greater than equal to 0, if user has entered space as its character, this will give it particular index number. This time we have not used -1 because it has found a space. We have to ensure that there is no space. If user has found a space, it will give it a particular number, greater 0 or greater than 0. If that is the case, again generate an error, enter a valid email address, and you can have more proper description. Make sure we write this inside the brackets again, save it. Let's say Zeeshan, I give a space and then I print it @gmail.com. so everything is okay. But if I click OK, it should give me an error, it should give me an error, it should give me an error. It didn't give me an error. Why didn't it give me an error? Let's just print this thing again. So plus brackets space colon and then plus again and then index, this time space, Control S @gmail.com. so if I click OK, so I have -1, there is no space. However, if I give a space, now click OK, it's a 0. So 0 basically means that there is a space. In this case, this condition becomes true. If this becomes true, it should give me this error. control S, greater than equal to, I think if this is the correct operator, enter a valid email address. Okay, so here we go. So we have a space now. So if I come here, give it a space, close this .com, and give it an OK, enter a valid email address. I think there's just this symbol placement was creating a confusion. Okay, so enter valid email address. Again, let me just give it one more try with a proper letter. So I have given Zeeshan Bhatti as space, and then I write my email address @gmail.com. So everything is all okay, but there's a space at the first. So if I click OK, it gives me enter a valid email address, and then obviously there is no error. If I just remove the space and then I click OK, and you would see that 7 being the @ sign, 13 being the dot sign, dot index, and then -1 basically means there is no space. Okay. Similarly, if I give a space here, click OK, again it says enter a valid email address, so that there is a space here. Again, this output is from the previous result. Okay. Similarly, if I give anywhere a space, so this is one validation that we can do with JavaScript of the text fields. You can also check the password field. It's not empty. The number of characters, for example, using the length function can validate that thing. So if I maximize this again, I think I need to switch this. So you read it. So you can see there are various different methods that we can use. Some of them have already been available in Java. If you are coming from Java, you would have already used it. Okay, so we can use index of functions. Last index of basically means read the character index from the last character, so it goes backwards and fetches the data. Okay, to lowercase to uppercase will make the letters capitalized or small. Substring will return a certain part of the string as well. So we will try to do these examples in future classes as well. So hopefully you will understand a few of these things, and we will try to work with more of these functions in next classes. Thank you very much for watching. If any problem and confusion, don't forget to leave your comments down below. Thank you.